Hey, this is Mike from Muscle for Life, and welcome to another episode of my podcast. This episode is part of a weekly series that I have dubbed Motivation Monday. Yes, I know, so creative of me. What can I say? I'm just a genius. Seriously though, the idea here is simple. Every Monday morning, I am going to post a short and punchy episode that I hope gets you fired up to tackle the workouts, work, and everything else that you have planned for the week ahead. Because it's one thing to know what you want to do, but it's something else altogether to actually make yourself do it. And I hope that this series gives you a jolt of energy and encouragement to go ahead and do all of those things that you want to do. So if you like what you hear, then make sure to check back every Monday morning for the latest and greatest installment. So as usual, let's start today's episode with a quote. And this one comes from Bob Dylan. Here's what he says, quote, "What's money? A man is a success if he gets up in the morning and goes to bed at night, and in between does what he wants to do." Now, I have some good news and some bad news for you. Which one would you like first? If you're like me, then you like to take your medicine before you eat your dessert. So here's the bad news. In the struggles of life, you're going to be the loser sometimes. I'm going to be the loser sometimes. It happens. We're not going to win every battle. Sometimes we're going to get outsmarted. Sometimes we're going to get blindsided by the unforeseeable. Sometimes obstacles are going to prove much more formidable than we had anticipated. But we have to remember that just because we lose a battle doesn't mean that we have lost the war. In fact, the art of losing battles is just as important as the art of winning them. Sometimes losing skillfully is the difference between a prelude to a powerful counterattack and a catastrophic disintegration of the entire campaign. An unskilled loser makes for an easy opponent. He loses focus. He leaves his flanks wide open to be exploited. He goes down without much of a fight. He lets you inflict massive damage with impunity. He also fails to learn from his missteps and can be easily led into other traps and pitfalls. Now, on the other hand, a skilled loser is always a threat. I think that's the worst type of opponent. He makes you scratch and claw for every inch. He might be down, but so long as he still is drawing breath, he's never out. He learns, he adapts, he strikes back. My point is this: if we want to know how to win wars, then we better know how to lose battles. And to drop the abstract war analogies, I think that this concept applies really to any and all competitive endeavors in our lives, even if they only involve competing against the nebulous marketplace or maybe even ourselves. The war that I'm talking about, that's the big goal. That's the brass ring. And the battles are the milestones that you have to achieve to get there. So let's take a closer look at what skillful losing looks like and how we can use this to improve our chances of ultimate success in any area of our lives. First, we should never lose because we got outworked. I think that nobody is easier to beat than the sucker that wastes time chasing shortcuts, weird tricks, and other ways to avoid the real effort that it takes to win. Lazy people are ineffective and easily overcome. So if we want to be a contender in any field, we just can't afford to be lazy. I recently read an interview with one of my favorite biographers, Chernow, who recently released his latest and greatest book on Ulysses Grant. And in the course of writing that book, he read hundreds of books on Grant. He read through dozens of volumes of Grant's personal letters. In the interview, he quipped that you should never underestimate the laziness of your predecessors. That stuck with me because I feel the same way, at least to some degree, about my personal journey so far over the last 5 years or so in the health and fitness space, both in writing books and selling supplements and everything else that we're doing, because, you know, my team and I, we've achieved quite a bit in a relatively short period of time. I've sold about 1 million books now. We've built an 8-figure supplement business. some very, very popular blogs, millions of visits a month. And I would attribute a lot of that not to our outstanding brilliance or skill. I do think we generally are pretty smart and we're pretty good at our jobs, but I would say a much larger factor is just how bad a lot of our competition is. Just really bad, whether it's on the content creation side, how much bad content gets created out there, especially written. And if we're talking about supplements, how many companies are just bad at the supplement game. They make bad products, they market them poorly, they just don't know what they're doing. And if that sounds arrogant or boastful to you, I understand, but I don't think it is at all. I think saying that it's not that I'm so good, it's that the people I'm playing against are really bad is much less arrogant than just saying, oh, it's, I've been able to do all these things, my team and we've been able to do all these things because we're just fucking amazing. That's not what I'm saying at all. Again, I think we're good, but we're just playing against a bunch of people that are not very good. Now, if we were to try to level up and play against some bigger, more established companies, like if we were trying to go up against Beachbody, different story. Beachbody's very good. It would be much harder to compete against them than to compete against the people that we're competing against, other bloggers, other book writers, other smaller supplement companies. I know Beachbody is not a supplement company per se, but they do, I think they have Shakeology, which I'm sure they sell a lot of. But anyways, you get my point. So getting back on track here, I think that extraordinary diligence, just the willingness to work really fucking hard, is a type of weapon in itself. It challenges would-be opponents to an arms race of sorts and saves you from having to deal with the riffraff that couldn't even hope to keep up. That willingness to outwork, it just demands respect. For the weak-willed, it's intimidating and it's even discouraging to face. It instills a haunting dread that no matter how hard someone is going to work to try to beat you, it's just not going to be enough. Somehow they figure you're just going to figure out how to get ahead. This is something that you will see in a lot of the greatest generals in history. A lot of these guys were known for their almost superhuman ability to just outwork their enemies. For example, one of my favorites, and just one of my favorite characters in history, Alexander the Great, was renowned for his unequaled dedication to his conquests. Once he locked his sights in on that next milestone, whether it's a city to subdue or siege or a region to assimilate, he spent every waking minute in action making it so, and he refused to believe that anything was impossible. In his own words, he believed that the most slavish thing was to luxuriate, and the most royal thing to do was to labor. One of the other all-time greats, Napoleon, also embraced this type of tireless work ethic. For example, to prepare for his first major military conquest, he disappeared into his office for several days with massive maps of Germany, Switzerland, and Italy, and he spread these maps out from wall to wall in his office on the floor, and then on his desk were piles and piles of reconnaissance reports, and in boxes were stacked hundreds and hundreds of note cards with possible moves that the Austrians might make in response to the maneuvers that he was planning. So what he did is he ran through every permutation of attack and counterattack that he could imagine, and he used this exhaustive analysis to build campaigns that were so finely calibrated that he was able to uncannily and ultimately accurately predict the exact towns where final battles would take place, and even the diplomatic concessions that would be granted to him as a result. The moral of these stories is that a lot of the mystique that's enjoyed by winners is really nothing more than long hours of hard work. You may not have seen all that work, but that's what went into it. And that's a power that really any one of us can immediately embrace and wield in our lives. So the second principle of skilled losing is if you're going to go down, then go down fighting. Now, sometimes it does just become clear that victory is no longer possible. And once you reach that point, once you know that defeat is inevitable, it's almost always better to go down swinging. That is, it's almost always better to do everything you can to deprive your opponents of an easy, painless victory. Now, this has several distinct advantages over just crumpling into a ball, going to the fetal position, and just taking your beating. It helps you lose on a high note. It rallies you for the next fight, and it can actually inflict more damage than the winner expects, tainting their success with Pyrrhic overtones. Robert Greene, he spoke about this concept in his fantastic book, which I recommend, and it is The 33 Strategies of War. Here's what he said. Quote, "At the Battle of the Alamo in 1836, every last American fighting the Mexican army died, but they died heroically, refusing to surrender. The battle became a rallying cry, remember the Alamo, and an inspired American force under Sam Houston finally defeated the Mexicans for good. You do not have to experience physical martyrdom, but a display of heroism and energy makes defeat into a moral victory that will soon enough translate into a concrete one. Planting the seeds of future victory in present defeat is strategic brilliance of the highest order." Now, fortunately for most of us, we are not fighting actual wars, so losing a battle doesn't mean losing our lives, but it can mean losing our self-respect, losing our will to press on. And by going down fighting, by staying on track and seeing the losing battle through to a proper end, we can maintain our dignity, our momentum, and our morale. And that can make all the difference in what we ultimately learn from losing and where we go from there. Which brings me to point number 3, and that is learn from your losses. So in defeat, the habitual loser does anything but carefully and objectively analyze it. He places blame elsewhere, he revises the facts, or he just blocks it from his memory. He also finds even the smallest failures incredibly demotivating because, going back to the first point we talked about, he's just looking for the free ride. He's hoping it's going to come easily. He's hoping that it won't cost all that much sweat, time, or tears. And that's the person that we do not want to be. The reality is, defeats can be remarkably instructive if we are willing to take personal responsibility for our failures. When we lose, if we assume that it's because we were beaten, that we just weren't good enough, then we can try to find out why and how we could have done better. We can let our struggles and mistakes point the way. Here we can take a page from the book of top-tier professional sports players because many of them rigorously and scientifically analyze every aspect of their games to pinpoint weaknesses that they can strengthen through diligent, deliberate practice. Military history is also replete with examples of how patient, stubborn analysis of defeats can create breakthroughs that turn the tables. For example, after several catastrophic defeats, the Romans realized that they just couldn't beat Hannibal in large-scale set-piece battles. So instead, what they did is they devised an attritional strategy of scorched earth tactics and guerrilla warfare. And slowly but surely, they ground his men and material down until he was just no longer a threat to Rome. So the point here is that winners know that defeats don't have to remain tragedies. They can be incredibly instructive and often show the way to future successes. Hey there, it's Mike again. I hope you enjoyed this episode and found it interesting and helpful. And if you did and don't mind doing me a favor, then please do give this video a like and leave a comment down below. Not only do I like to hear from everybody and I jump in and reply to as many comments as I can, it also helps other people find their way to the show and learn how to build their best bodies ever too. And of course, if you want to be notified when the next episode goes live, then just subscribe to my channel and you won't miss out on any of the new content. Lastly, if you didn't like something about the show, then definitely shoot me an email at mike@muscleflife.com and share your thoughts on how you think it could be better. I read everything myself and I'm always looking for constructive feedback, so please do reach out. Thanks again for listening to the episode, and I hope to hear from you soon. And lastly, this episode is brought to you by me. Seriously though, I'm not big on promoting stuff that I don't personally use and believe in, so instead I'm going to just quickly tell you about something of mine. Specifically, my one-on-one coaching service. So the long story short here is this is the personal coaching service that I wish I had when I started in the gym many years ago. Every diet and training program that we create for clients is 100% custom. We provide daily workout logs and do weekly accountability calls. Our clients get priority email service and discounts on supplements, and the list goes on and on. Furthermore, my team and I have also worked with hundreds of people of all ages, circumstances, and needs and goals. So no matter how tricky you might think your situation is, I promise you we can figure out how to get you results. If I have piqued your interest and you want to learn more, then head on over to www.muscleforlife.com/coaching and schedule your free consultation call now. I'll tell you, there's usually a wait list and new slots fill up very quickly. So if you're interested at all, don't wait. Go schedule your call now.